I was in church 3 times a week for 18 years. Youth group, Sunday school, mission trips, the whole thing. And people always ask me, do you regret it? Like that's the question. Like it's that simple. But here's what I actually think about. I'm 28 now, and sometimes I meet people my age who just know things. They know how to exist in a world without checking over their shoulder. They don't flinch when they have a sexual thought. They didn't spend their teenage years memorizing verses about staying pure while their body was screaming at them that something was wrong with this picture. So no, it's not about regret. It's about cost. And I'm still doing the math. Hey, I'm Jose, and if you click on this video, chances are you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or maybe you're curious. Maybe you're still in it and something feels off. Or maybe you left and you're trying to figure it out why you feel so weird about it, why you can just move on like everyone keeps telling you to. This video isn't a piece of Christianity or religion in general. I'm not here to debate theology or prove anyone wrong. I'm here to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough. The actual, tangible cost of growing up in a high-control religious environment. Not the obvious stuff, not the, oh, I had to go to church on Sunday mornings. I'm talking about the deep psychological developmental costs that you don't even realize you're paying until you're out. I left the church when I was 18. I'm in my late 20s now, and I'm still unpacking boxes I didn't even know I packed. So let's get into it. And if this resonates with you, or if you disagree, or if you have your own story, leave a comment. I read all of them. So let's start with the social stuff, because that's what hit me when I first left. I remember being 19 at a party, my first real party, and someone made a joke. Everyone laughed. I didn't get it. It was a reference to some movie I've never seen because it was rated R and my parents didn't allow that. And I laughed anyway, you know, that fake laugh you do when you're trying to fit in. But I felt it. That distance, the gap. And it wasn't just movies, it was music, it was TV shows, it was entire cultural moments that everyone else had experienced together while I was at a Wednesday night Bible study. You know what I missed? I missed being a kid who could just watch cartoons on a Saturday morning without someone asking if it was glorifying to God. I missed sleepovers where we didn't have to pray before watching a Disney movie. I miss being a teenager who could listen to music without checking if the lyrics mentioned sex or drugs or anything that might corrupt me. You might think I'm being dramatic. You might think it's just pop culture, who cares? But here's the thing. Shared culture is how people bond. It's how friendships form. Inside jokes, references, the stuff you quote at each other. When you miss out on all of that, you're operating with a different language. You're always a half step behind, always trying to catch up, always feeling like an outsider. But it's deeper than pop culture references. Let's talk about friendship. In the church, I had friends, lots of them. Youth group was my entire social life. These were the people I spent every Wednesday and Sunday with. We went to summer camp together. We did mission trips together. We knew each other's families. It felt real. And then I left. And I learned what conditional love actually looks like. Because when I stopped showing up to my youth group, when I stopped posting Bible verses on social media, when I started asking questions that made people uncomfortable, those friendships evaporated. Not all of them, but most of them. And the ones that stayed, they stayed because they thought they could bring me back. They stayed because I was a project, a prayer request, a testimony waiting to happen. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a backslider. Here's what they don't tell you when you're growing up in the church. Your friendships aren't really friendships if they contingent on you believing in the right things. That's not friendships, that's a membership. And when you cancel your membership, you lose access to the clubhouse. I'm not saying everyone in the church is fake. I'm saying the structure creates fake intimacy. You feel close to people because you're singing the same songs, speaking the same language, performing the same rituals. But strip away the religion and what's left. In my case, not much. Starting over socially in your late teens, early 20s is brutal. Everyone else has their friend groups already established. They have history, they have inside jokes. And you're just there, trying to figure it out how to be a person without a script. And there's this other thing. Even after you leave, even after you try to integrate into normal society, you still carry this weirdness, this awkwardness. Because you were raised in a bubble, and bubbles don't prepare you for the real world. I didn't know how to talk to people about normal things. I didn't know how to flirt without feeling like I was committing a sin. I didn't know how to have a casual conversation about sex or relationships without my brain going into panic mode. I didn't know how to drink alcohol without feeling like I was watching myself from the outside of my body, judging myself, waiting for lightning to strike. Everything felt like a performance. Everything felt like I was acting normal instead of actually being normal. And people could tell. They could sense it. I was a weird kid, the sheltered kid. The kid who didn't get the joke. The kid who was always just a little too earnest, a little too serious, a little too churchy, even though I wasn't in a church anymore. That label sticks, and it takes years to shed it. Maybe it never fully goes away. Okay, let's get into the heavier stuff. The psychological damage. I'm going to talk about purity culture because I have to. If you grew up evangelical, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, buckle up. Purity culture is the idea that your body, especially if you're a girl, but boys get it too, is a gift that you're saving for your future spouse. Your virginity is a commodity. It has value. And if you give it away before marriage, you're like a chewed up piece of gun. You're a rose with all the petals plucked off. You're damaged goods. They literally use those metaphors. So you grow up believing that your body is simultaneously a temple and a ticking time bomb. You're taught that sexual thoughts are simple, and masturbation is simple, that even noticing someone attractive is a slippery slope to full-blown depravity. And if you're a teenage human with hormones, which you are, you fail a lot. And every time you fail, you feel shame. Deep, visceral, soul-crushing shame. You pray for forgiveness. You promise God you'll do better. You white-knuckle it for a few days or weeks, and then you fail again. And the cycle continues. I can't overstate how damaging this is. I genuinely believed that I was broken, that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't stop having sexual thoughts. I thought I was uniquely sinful, uniquely weak, uniquely disgusting. And here's the kicker, I wasn't even doing anything. I wasn't having sex. I was barely even thinking about having sex. I was just existing in a body. And that was enough to make me feel like garbage. Let's talk about fear. The church runs on fear. They don't call it that. They call it reverence or conviction or a healthy fear of the Lord. But it's fear. Fear of hell. Fear of God's wrath. Fear of being left behind in the rapture. Fear of sinning. Fear of leading others into sin. Fear of asking the wrong questions. Fear of doubting. Fear of everything. You thought that the world is dangerous, that Satan is prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, that secular music and movies and books are tools of the devil, that your non-Christian friends are going to drag you down, that you're always one bad decision away from eternal damnation. So you live in a state of constant vigilance, constant anxiety. You're always monitoring yourself, always checking, is this thought sinful? Is this actual sinful? Is this desire sinful? It's exhausting. And when you leave, that fear just doesn't go away. It lingers. It mutates. I still catch myself sometimes years later having a flash of panic when I do something that was thought I was wrong. I'll swear, and for a split second, I'll feel that old fear spike, like God is watching, like I'm being judged. It's irrational. I don't believe in that version of God anymore. But the programming runs deep. Here's another thing the church teaches you. Everything is black and white, good or evil, righteous or sinful. There's no room for nuance, no room for complexity, no room for I don't know. And that might work when you're a kid and the world is simple. But it doesn't work when you're an adult and the world is complicated. I had to relearn how to think. I had to relearn how to sit with and be with it. How to hold two contradictory ideas in my head at the same time. How to say, I don't know, and that's okay. That's not a skill they teach you in Sunday school. They teach you that doubt is dangerous, that questions are a sign of weak faith, that if you're struggling, you just need to pray harder, read the Bible more, trust God's plan. So you learn to suppress doubt, you learn to perform certainty. You learn to bury your questions under layers of Bible verses and worship songs. And then one day, you can't do it anymore. The questions are too loud, the doubts are too heavy, and you realize you never actually learned how to think critically. You've only learned how to recite the right answers. Starting from scratch in your 20s, trying to figure out what you actually believe about the world, about morality, about meaning, is disorienting. It's terrifying. It's like learning to walk again after being in a wheelchair your whole life. Let's talk about intellectual development. When you grow up in the church, you're not taught how to think. You're taught what to think. That's the difference. How to think means learning to evaluate evidence, consider multiple perspectives, change your mind when presenting with new information, sit with uncertainty, ask good questions. What to think means memorizing doctrine, accepting authority, defending predetermined conclusions, dismissing contradictory evidence, conflating faith with certainty. I spent my teenage years learning apologetics. I could give you 15 reasons why evolution is fake. I could recite the cosmological argument for God's existence. I could explain why homosexuality is a sin using 3 different Bible verses. But I couldn't tell you how to actually evaluate a claim. I couldn't tell you what makes a source reliable. I couldn't tell you how to spot a logical fallacy unless it was in atheist arguments, in which case I'd been trained to dismantle it. My critical thinking was weaponized, not developed. It was a tool for defending my beliefs, not examining them. And when I left, I had to start over. I had to actually learn how to think, how to research, how to be intellectually honest. It's humbling and it's frustrating. Because I look back at the years I spent memorizing Bible verses and learning creationalist talking points, and I think, what else could I have been learning? What skills could I have developed? What knowledge could I have gained? Here's a fun one. Practical life skills. You know what I didn't learn in church? How to manage money, how to negotiate, how to set boundaries, how to have difficult conversations, how to navigate conflict in healthy ways, how to understand consent. Instead, I learned how to lead a small group Bible study. I learned how to plan a mission trip. I learned how to play guitar for worship. I learned how to share my testimony. I learned how to play the violin. Don't get me wrong, some of those skills transfer. Leadership is leadership. Public speaking is public speaking, but the context is so specific, so insular, that it doesn't always translate. And there are huge gaps. Huge areas of development that just didn't happen because I was too busy being a good Christian kid. Let's talk about sexuality since we're already uncomfortable. I got 0 real sex education. I got purity culture. I got true love's ways. But I didn't learn about consent. I didn't learn about communication. I didn't learn about pleasure, mine or anyone else's. I didn't learn that sex is supposed to be mutual and enjoyable, not just a spousely duty you endure. I had to figure all of that out in my 20s, while also unlearning all the shame and guilt I feared that had been drilled into me. Same with relationships in general. I didn't learn how to set boundaries. I learned that boundaries were selfish. I learned to die to self, to put others first, to be a servant, which sounds nice in theory. In practice, it meant I let people walk all over me for years because I thought that's what being a good person meant. Here's the thing that people don't get. When you leave a high-control religious environment, you just don't leave the religion. You leave your entire framework for understanding the world. Everything you thought you knew about morality, purpose, identity, community is all tied to the religion. And when you leave, it all crumbles, and you have to rebuild from scratch. Most people get to do this gradually over the course of childhood and adolescence. They explore different ideas. They test boundaries. They figure out who they are through trial and error. I didn't get that. I got a script. I got a pre-written identity. I am a child of God. I am saved by grace. I am set apart. Who am I without all that? I had no idea. I spent my late teens and early 20s in this weird liminal space trying to figure out the most basic things. What do I actually like? What do I actually value? What do I want my life to look like? These are the questions most people start grappling with at 15. I was starting at 19. And it's lonely because everyone else is moving forward and you're stuck at the starting line trying to figure out which direction to run. Let's do some math. 3 church services a week, 2 hours each. That's 6 hours a week. Youth group on Wednesday, 2 hours. Sunday school, 1 hour. That's 9 hours a week, minimum. 52 weeks a year, that's 468 hours a year. 18 years, that's 8,424 hours. That's 351 days. Almost a full year of my life just sitting in church building. And that's not counting summer camp, mission trips, retreats, conferences, volunteer work, prayer meetings, Let's be conservative and say it was closer to 10,000 hours. You know what you can do with 10,000 hours? You can become an expert at something. You can master a skill. You can build something meaningful. I spent 10,000 hours listening to sermons and singing worship songs. But it's just not the hours, it's the mental and emotional energy, the constant self-monitoring, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the performance. Even when I wasn't physically in church, I was mentally in church. Every decision was filtered through a religious lens. Every thought was evaluated for sinfulness. Every interaction was an opportunity to witness or a temptation to avoid. I was never just present, never just existed. I was always performing, always calculating, always wrestling with the gap between who I was supposed to be and who I actually was. That's exhausting, and it takes a toll. I look back at photos of myself as a teenager and I see it. I see the tension, the forced smile, the performance. I wasn't living my life. I was auditioning for a role I didn't even want. Here's the thing I want to say to anyone watching this who relates. It's okay to grieve this. People will tell you to move on. They will tell you to focus on the future. They will also tell you that dwelling on the past is unhealthy. But you lost something. You lost years, you lost experiences, you lost a version of yourself that could have existed if you'd been free to explore and grow and make mistakes without the weight of external consequences hanging over your head. That's worth grieving. I'm not saying you should stay stuck in grief forever. I'm not saying you should let it consume you. I'm saying it's valid, it's real, and you don't have to pretend it's not. You can be grateful for the good parts, and that probably were good parts, while also acknowledging the cost. Both things can be true. So yeah, that's the real cost. The stuff nobody talks about when they are debating theology or arguing about whether religion is good or bad. I can't get those years back. I can't undo the psychological damage overnight. I can't reclaim the time or the energy or the experiences I missed. But I can talk about it. I can name it. I can stop pretending it didn't happen or that it didn't matter. And maybe if you're watching this, you see yourself in my story, you feel a little less alone, a little less crazy, a little more validated, because that's what I needed when I first left. I needed someone to say, yeah, this is hard, yeah, you lost something. It's okay to be angry and sad and confused. So I'm saying it now. If you're still in it and something feels off, trust that feeling. You're not broken. You're not sinful for asking questions. And if you're out and you're trying to rebuild, be patient with yourself. You're doing something incredibly difficult. You're relearning how to exist in the world, and that takes time. I'm still figuring it out. I probably will be for a while. But I'm figuring it out as myself now, not as a character in someone else's story. And that's worth it. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, leave a comment and click on this video right here.